Thank you for joining us on the Southwest Florida Business Podcast. I'm your host, Chris, and today I'm joined by Brandon Box from Cogent Bank. Now, this interview is specifically geared towards small business owners in Southwest Florida. We talk about the advantages of using a small bank, a local business bank. We also talk about how they use technology and customer service to make it a great experience for their business owners. And we also talk about how they diversify their assets to make sure the bank is fiscally strong. Now, if you're a small business owner in the area and you're thinking of making the switch, they do offer a consultation when you start to check out your accounts, make sure everything's flowing smoothly, and see where you can save some money. So if you want to reach out directly to Brandon, his info is in the links below. But otherwise, please enjoy this episode with Brandon Box from Cogent Bank. This episode is brought to you by Southwest Florida Podcast. We help businesses make marketing videos. A lot of businesses see the value in video content, but they don't know where to start. We work with businesses to highlight the value they bring to their customers and share that online. Now, we've created the Marketing Manager's Guide to Video Content that you can download for free by following the link below or scanning the QR code on your screen. Now, enjoy the show. Brandon, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Nice. So, all right. So as we've got a bunch of stuff that we want to dig into, questions about big banks versus small banks, how you guys can help out small businesses, medium-sized businesses in this area. I know I have a bunch of questions personally too about it. But can we kind of dig into the background of Cogent, maybe the history of it, how it came to be, and then where it's at now?
Absolutely. So Cogent Bank was founded about 4 years ago and was really the brainchild of a group of former bank entrepreneurs who had grown a bank for about 15 years. And due to circumstances of just not having a lot of shareholders, really they had one primary shareholder, sort of forced a sale of the company. And for a lot of people, they wanted to continue growing the bank and just enjoyed the entrepreneurial challenge of being a smaller bank. So after a few years, a couple of those individuals said, hey, let's get the band back together again and try to do this again. And of course, you learn some of the things you want to do again. You also learn some of the things you don't want to do again. So back in 2018, these guys embarked on a capital raise and bought a little bank charter outside of Orlando called Pinnacle Bank. It was a bank that had been around for a long time, but never really recovered fully from the Great Recession. So after that bank was purchased, really went through the whole process of reorganizing the bank. So new board of directors, new management team, new brand, new name, really kind of starting over, but getting the charter. And from that point forward, really 3 years ago, embarked on the proactive and the offensive side of the business. And so really part of that is a big capital raise, and we've raised maybe close to $90 million or so. And that was all friends, family, clients, board members, no real private equity, institutional capital. So it's kind of neat. We're a privately held business and a small business, just like many of our clients. And when people hear of a bank, they think, wow, it's this big organization and they have so much money. And sometimes that's true, but the reality is we're also a growing business, just like our clients and entrepreneurs. So many of us invested our own money in the bank, and really we're out there for two reasons. Number one, we just want a great place to work, and we really want to work for ourselves. And so that was a big driver for many of us on the ground floor. But the second reason was we just want to be able to help our clients in a way that maybe many folks couldn't in a previous life, whether it was just their banks went through mergers or consolidations, or they just got kind of isolated in certain divisions where they couldn't help their clients with a broad spectrum of things. So we're excited. 4 years later, we're about $1.5 billion in assets, which is a nice sized community bank.
Wow.
And our goal is really just to be a profitable, successful bank in Florida that continues to help small businesses.
Okay, got it. So I think that's a good transition into talking about a small bank versus a big bank, some of the advantages that it has, because even just as a newer business owner, primarily I would think of just these bigger banks, and I would think that was the only option that I had to work with. And it wasn't until I talked with you and we kind of talked through some of the different frustrations that a lot of business owners have. And I spoke with a bunch of small business owners before this, and they have a lot of frustrations too. So what's it really like to work with a small bank as opposed to a big bank? Like, what are the main pain points that you're solving for businesses?
Well, I'll start by saying the world needs big banks and the world needs small banks. If you look at the best economies in the world, they all have great banking systems. It kind of depends on what size the business is and what their particular needs are. But for us and kind of what we believe small businesses like, it starts with a relationship, a personal relationship, and access to that person relatively easily, whether it's a cell phone number, a direct dial number to their office, and then quick answers. And the challenge the last 10 years or so has really been people have loved small bank service, but the small banks just didn't, and I'm saying holistically, keep up with the technology that the industry is onboarding now. So people
How so?
Well, they like the technology and online banking of the big banks, but they like the service of the small banks. And so there was this predicament. And we felt for us, it was the right time to be a modern small bank where you could provide clients with the old school service that they were used to, knowing their banker's name, going to their Christmas party, walking into the office and everybody knowing their name. But combine that with modern technology that's really easy to implement now if you're a new bank, because you can just put the best information technology in up front. So for us, I think it's about customer service, and customers, especially small businesses, really value that. Sometimes individuals just want convenience for ATMs, or they just want to have great online banking where they can see all of their accounts at once, and they're kind of tied into the small banks with monthly auto debits, bill pay, all those things. But small businesses, we find, really value that personal service. High net worth individuals, we find, really value that personal service. But you have to be, as a small bank, able to help all their needs, which has been historically the challenge with smaller banks.
So what are those challenges for that you've seen for these small banks in the past?
Sure. So oftentimes a small bank can do one thing, but not another. For instance, they may be able to get a great mortgage through their smaller bank, but when it came time to get their business line of credit, their bank was just too small. Or maybe they had their business account at a small bank, but they really needed to have a great online wire system where they could send wires both domestically and internationally, or process their payroll through that small bank. And it would just become a challenge because the bank would be good at one thing, but not the next. So it would kind of force some business owners and individuals to go have multiple banking relationships. And that can just be a challenge, just everything from remembering your passwords to customer service. And for us, it's about how can you provide everything to clients without them having to bounce from bank to bank, but still keep that old-fashioned customer service.
Okay, got it. So it's kind of having that firepower that lets them do the business things that they need to do in order to expand, everything like that, but then also consolidating everything into one spot. So as a business owner, whereas you have 400 systems that you're running for accounting, keeping track of sales, all these things, it's just one less thing that you need to worry about.
Exactly.
Okay.
We find that clients, whether it be just through multiple mergers and acquisitions, or maybe they started with a small bank and 10 years later, it's a big bank, they sort of get lost in the shuffle. And for multiple reasons, sometimes we hear they just have not talked to their bank in a long time, and the bank hasn't sat down with them and reviewed their structure and talked about ways that they can maybe operate more efficiently. But most times, small business owners are really busy. Think of your business. You're busy doing your day job and doing the things that you have to do to provide for your family and keep people employed. You don't want to talk to your bank that often, but when you do talk to your bank, you just want it to be checked off the list. You want it to be a quick process, and you want to get the answer quickly, whatever it may be.
Yeah, because it's probably a problem usually when people are reaching out for the smaller end stuff. So, and those tend to turn into bigger problems when somebody doesn't get back to you in time.
Exactly.
So how do you guys address that? Like, what's it like for somebody? Obviously, we don't everybody has these issues all the time, but business isn't perfect. People are going to have issues. And a lot of what I hear from small business owners when they call a bank is like I got this guy's phone number, but it's basically a 1-800 number. I have to wait on calls. I basically don't hear back, or I'll get an email back 3 days later, and I need somebody now. So how do you guys mitigate that? What do you do to deliver that service?
Yeah, it definitely is a key focus of ours, and I think that's where smaller banks generally have a little bit of a competitive advantage because we have fewer clients overall and we're a smaller organization. They're generally flatter organizations. So, for instance, there's a whole team behind the scenes in banking that customers never see, but we'll call it deposit operations. If there's a deposit issue with an account, maybe something funny that posted on an account or fraudulent activity or just check reconciliation that's not making sense, how do you get them an answer? And oftentimes it's the banker behind the scenes working with the back office associates and deposit operations to find some answers and figure out solutions. And that's where when you have less employees, you can call the head of that division or text them and try to get, prioritization over, maybe other situations that aren't as pressing for clients. And so when you're with a bigger organization, whether it's banking or whether it's any other industry, there's just kind of a process for everything. And while we have defined processes, we're highly regulated, we have to do things by the book. We also have close personal relationships in the organization, and we always try to prioritize client needs.
Yeah, and that's a big part. I've been part of companies that grow and all these, expand, and it's great. But if it's not handled well and you lose that kind of personal touch, the customer kind of becomes a secondary thought. They don't become the main person that you focus on. Like you said, you kind of become a number in a process, or you're like a widget that's being processed. And
it's the way we're kind of wired to think. We're entrepreneurs and we're a small business. So by design, we're here to grow. We're here to help our clients because we're not successful if we don't grow and help our customers. Whereas when you hit a certain point, again, in any industry, you've kind of made it. You're at the mature part of the life cycle and you're focused on other things. So it's just a different stage of the life cycle, a different philosophy. Yep. And we kind of service a different sector of the market.
What are some of the situations that you find that kind of drive people to want to work with you? Like, what are some of the challenges that they run into that ultimately make them say, like, all right, I gotta give you a call?
Well, I'd say we don't do a lot of advertising. Pretty much all of the clients we have are either people we've worked with in the past or referrals from either other happy clients or, whether it's CPAs or attorneys, people that are trying to help their customers land in a good spot. So usually what happens is someone that we've met or someone that we've worked with in the past, we're always trying to stay in front of them and tell them the good things we're doing. But they're typically, it's a pain to switch banks, right? Yeah. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I really am looking forward to switching banks today. But there's usually some trigger or some event that causes them to say, I'm fed up or I'm ready to do this. And that could be a number of things. On the deposit side, it could be they had fraud on an account and it wasn't handled properly by their current bank, meaning maybe that bank put just a hard hold on their deposit accounts and really put the business in a bad situation where they couldn't operate or couldn't clear checks for a while.
Or couldn't pay employees when that time came up.
Exactly. Okay. Or it could be a situation where we had one the other day where their current bank didn't have the technology they needed to make payments to their vendors through ACH, or really charged a lot of money for that to the point where a small business said, this is really hurting. I mean, $100 here and there is a lot of money to a small business. So those fees can rack up. It also happens on the loan side. A lot of times we have a lot of clients who maybe they've had a relationship with a big bank or another bank for 30 years. Well, then they go in to try to get a mortgage and they're turned down, maybe because they're a business owner and they don't have W-2 income. They have Schedule E or pass-through income. And so they automatically kind of got passed on, or their line of credit got turned down. And that's usually when they say, hey, who else do I know in this industry that I can call? And hopefully we're at the top of that list. Or they'll say, hey, CPA, who do you know that has been taking care of your other clients? We'd love to meet someone. And that's where we just hope Cogent Bank is the name that comes to mind. And if you do a good job time after time, you get more and more referrals and you hope the word spreads.
For sure. Well, and so, okay, in a case like that, and somebody wants to come to you, they've exhausted other options, like they get turned down for a loan, but they're a small, medium-sized business that wants to expand. They want to have access to the finances to be able to do that. What does it look like to come to you guys and to do something like that? Like, how do you assess the situation? What kind of guidance do you give to these business owners? And is that something that you do where you kind of look at what their situation is, their goals, and then how they get there? How do you guys do that?
It's a good question, and in no way am I indicating the answer is always yes.
Okay.
People get turned down everywhere, and then they come here and we give them the money. But what I do take a lot of pride in is we spend time with people. And you've been in our conference room, I think, but usually it all happens right there. If someone finds their way to Cogent Bank, we sit down and talk through with them where they are now, where they want to go, and what's the best path to get there. We do get clients from time to time that just don't qualify for traditional bank loans for whatever reason. But what we always try to do is get a quick answer, because nobody likes a long no. That's the worst of any solution or outcome.
Yep.
But we also have plenty of resources to help people, even if we can't help them. And no matter what, we always try to point people in a good direction and leave them better than we found them. So for instance, if they don't qualify for a traditional bank loan, meaning just a true commercial loan, we have a great SBA lending division, which oftentimes can help people with a government guarantee. Okay. We've got some USDA lending solutions, but there's also a lot of private lenders out there that we know where if someone's not quite ready to qualify for a traditional commercial loan, we try to introduce them to some folks that can help them, maybe get them to where they want to get, or the first step, and then maybe they become bankable in the future where we can jump in and help them again.
Got it.
So there's a lot of different solutions. I think what I've observed as the biggest challenge is people don't feel like their bank spends time with them. They submit all the information, and then 3 weeks later, they get a letter that says, "We've declined your loan. Thank you." And that's just frustrating, because if you can't help me, at least help point me in the right direction or tell me where I need to be to get this problem solved.
So can I ask you a question from a leadership perspective, why do you take that approach with, even in this case, I'll say prospective customers?
Sure.
Why is that important to you?
Well, it's very important to me, and I think our whole team, because number one, we live in the community and it's a small town, and it takes a long time to build a good reputation, but it can also be ruined quickly. And so if you don't treat people right, word spreads. And in today's world, if you don't treat someone well, that person's probably going to tell 10 people that you didn't treat them well. Whereas if you treat someone well, maybe they tell 2 people. So you can really hurt yourself by not doing the right thing. But even beyond that, our job is to help people. And banking as an industry used to be a very prestigious career. People held their bankers to a very high esteem. They were kind of in that inner circle with their attorney, their CPA, and that was kind of their group. But over the last couple of decades, really, banks have shot themselves in the foot by not treating customers right, by not doing the right thing, by being more of a sales company than a consultant to the business and helping them with what they really need. And because of that, we've lost a little credibility. So my mission, and I think Cogent's mission, is to slowly rebuild that reputation a little bit at a time.
Okay, got it. So a big part of it comes down to being part of the community, yes, but also having that philosophy of, if we consult with people, if we can give them the guidance, that's what's going to help our business grow. Because I guess if they do well in time, they're going to need more help. They're going to need to use your guys' solutions. So it's kind of a win-win in that situation.
Yeah, we get a lot of referrals from people we don't even end up working with. For whatever reason, they're not quite ready to make the switch, but they'll still tell people they had a great experience with Cogent Bank, or they know people that have had a great experience with Cogent Bank. And for us, that's just as valuable. Of course, we want everyone to be our client, but we also want a great reputation out there. We had the chance being a new bank to build a reputation from zero.
Sure.
We didn't have any baggage from the Great Recession, or we didn't have any historical negative situations. So we're just trying to make little deposits every day into our reputation and goodwill.
Nice. Okay. Well, and so talking about the Great Recession itself. So I know there's all these big banks that made it through. That's a whole. You could write 30 books on that whole
Sure.
situation. But I know that from an outsider perspective, looking at a big bank versus a small bank, some people will look at, if we use a big bank, that's maybe more secure or something
Sure.
like that. So as a smaller bank, I know that you guys have been increasing your the capitalization rate
Sure.
and the amount of assets managed and everything like that. Like you said, 1.5 billion in pretty short period of time,
Sure.
which is awesome. So how do you make sure that you can avoid some of those like huge kind of tragedies that happen
Sure.
in that time frame of like '08? How do you make sure the business is secure, make sure the finances are secure, make sure that your customers are taken care of? Like,
Absolutely.
what do you guys do to really strengthen that?
Yeah, I'd say there's a number of things, starting with maybe the regulatory side of things, which everybody hates talking about regulation and banking. But the reality is, after the Great Recession, they came up with Dodd-Frank and numerous other legislative bills that have really increased the capitalization requirements and the stress testing banks have to go through. To give you an example, banks have to have certain ratios of capital relative to their risky assets, meaning loans and other types of risky assets we have on our books. And those numbers have almost doubled since pre-Great Recession. So I'm not aware of any in Florida over the last 15-year bank failures, but there was a time back in 2008 through 2010 where it was like every Friday we opened the paper and, that bank failed, this bank failed. But through that, the regulatory and compliance environment really has gotten strict. And because of that, you just don't see near as many new banks because it's become much less profitable and much harder to start a bank. It used to be you could start a bank with about $6 million, and today it's $25 million to start that same bank. So divide the potential profitability by 4 right off the bat. And so 15 years ago, there was about 750 banks based in Florida. Today, there's maybe about 70. So
Wow.
if that's any indication of how difficult it is to have a new, smaller bank, it shows kind of the regulatory environment and its impact on the number of new bank entrepreneurs out there.
Okay, so it's making sure that you're in compliance with the regulations, obviously. And so what are some of the ways that you guys do that we can dig into?
Yeah, so internally, obviously, there's a lot that goes into running a bank, and it all starts with board of directors, loan policies, compliance policies, and stress testing policies. And part of that is when we were in the Great Recession, everybody wanted to be on a bank board. It was kind of fun and exciting, and it made them feel good. Well, it's a very stressful job, and it's a very difficult job if you're actually governing a bank. So there's a lot of internal policies and procedures and protocols that I could probably bore you with, but it starts with consistent monthly, quarterly audits on everything you can think of, not just loans, which get the most attention from maybe being risky, but internal audit, cybersecurity. There's all kinds of different protocols in place that you have to focus on consistently. But for us at Cogent specifically, when we were designing the company, it was about how can we be diversified. If you look at most banks that got hurt in the Great Recession or failed, there was a heavy concentration of something. Down
like
here,
a
it was
certain type of asset.
exactly.
Or something. Okay.
Down here, it was mostly real estate, right? I mean, real estate crashed. All these banks got real hurt. A lot of times it's geographic concentrations. Maybe a hurricane blows through a specific region and wipes it out, and therefore that bank kind of gets wiped out because they take so many loan losses. So when we were designing Cogent, the founders really wanted diversified revenue streams, but also diversified geographic areas. So our model is kind of the future of banking, which is less brick and mortar. You still have to have it in each city, and we do, but you also want great technology and great people, which is where we focus a lot of our money on, but also a diversified revenue base. So all kinds of different loans. You don't want to be too heavy in any one type of loan. And you also want to be diversified on the industries you serve. So you don't just want one type of operating company. You just don't want professional services. You want a little bit of everything. Just like you like your stock portfolio. You want it to be diversified and safe no matter what happens.
Got it. So that way, in case construction is booming right now, but
Sure.
in case hurricanes or whatever happens, that takes a downturn. The whole bank isn't based on a single industry or a single kind of asset doing well or not doing well.
And there's also other factors at play for customers. Of course, FDIC protection. There's also products that a lot of people don't know about where you can have unlimited FDIC coverage on your deposits through products called CDARS and Insured Cash Sweep. So there's things that most people don't know about just because their banks simply never talk to them about. That makes sense for customers. So it's, knock on wood, there hasn't been many bank failures in the last decade, but there may be a point in time again where we see some of those. But I do think with the new regulatory environment and stress testing, you'll see much fewer bank failures, but also you'll see much fewer startup banks because it's much tougher to do.
For sure. Okay, so it's a two-pronged approach to how you guys really protect that. It's follow the regulations, yes, use those as the guideline because obviously you need to do that, but then you have the extra layer, which is internal. And
Sure.
You mentioned two things, so technology and people. So how are you investing in those two? Why are they the main focus? And can we dig into those?
Sure. So let's start with people because we all know that's a company's greatest assets. For us, it all starts with people. When we were starting Cogent Bank, we didn't decide, let's open this location or let's open this department. It all starts with finding the right people. And for us, it had been mostly people we've worked with in the past in banking or outside of banking, people that we knew and trusted, but also people we knew that were the roll up their sleeves and work kind of folks. Because again, this is a small business. You don't kind of do a job and then go home or do a job and then go play golf for the day. This is a roll up your sleeves and work all day, every day, all year long type of a company. But it all starts with having people and a culture that you build of reliance and people you can trust day in and day out to do the job and have your back.
For sure.
And so that's where it all started, was about the people.
So how do you build that culture? Because a lot of people want that culture. A lot of people want to work for something like that. But it's pretty hard to find, even though there's tons of job openings and everything. You see it in Southwest Florida all the time. You can go through LinkedIn every day. You'll see 15 people saying, we're hiring and we're great and all this stuff. But how do you create that for the team?
Sure. It definitely is a challenge to hire good people. I mean, that's the number one challenge of every single one of our customers. I'm sure everyone you talk to says hiring people is tough. I will say we have a little bit of an unfair advantage right now, at least in this area, because there's been so much merger and consolidation in our industry. And people really are starved to love their banking job. There's not a ton of people out there, I would say, that just say, I love my bank. I love my job at the bank. It's a job and maybe it's well paying, but they're generally not the happiest people in the, around. So what we've been able to create is an environment where people have a sense of ownership, whether real ownership, maybe they invested their own money in the bank like many of us did, or just a sense of ownership in that they're helping to build something from scratch. It's not a company that's been around for 200 years and they get to be a part of something neat, but it's not theirs. For us, it's, look, you can come in and the sky is the limit when it comes to what we can do at Cogent Bank. So we really can provide what I think not a lot of people can provide right now, which is a small bank that's very sophisticated, a fun place to work, and a great team environment. Not an environment where you're just a salesperson, go hit your number, and we'll see at the end of the year how you did.
For sure.
This is you come in, lock arms with the people next to you, and we're going to laugh a lot, we're going to cry a lot, but it's a fun group.
For sure. Well, and so let's say somebody who's I don't know, close to my age. I'm 30, and I've worked at different big companies, different small companies. And part of what I always looked for with different companies that I worked at was kind of like you said, like a sense of belonging, or more importantly, a sense of what I'm doing actually matters. But one kind of pitfall I saw at a lot of companies was that you didn't really get the opportunity to work hand in hand with those people who are already established. So if somebody's, I don't know, let's say around my age, or somebody's been in professional for maybe 10 years, and they're looking to come somewhere where they can actually grow and have big opportunities. What is it like to train people who want to work for a company like this? What kind of opportunities are they going to get to talk to customers, to help those customers, to be part of these solutions that you're putting together for people? What does that look like for like a career path for people?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for someone that really wants to work hard. You know, you don't have a lot of younger people that get into banking these days, which is sad because it can be a really good career. You get to talk with customers, you get to meet a lot of different business owners, help them.
Yeah.
But you also get to, for us finance geeks, you know, you get to do some number crunching, Excel spreadsheets, math. So you get to kind of do it all. But the challenge is it's also a relationship business. So if you have someone that comes in and they want to be on, I'll call it the relationship management side, kind of the out working with clients, they have to be willing to spend after hours time meeting people, building relationships, spending time away from the family, doing those types of things. And some people love that. Some people would prefer to kind of do the inside number crunching work. And that's where I started originally. And, you know, it's a great side of the bank that not a lot of customers see. You know, the underwriters normally are the bad guys of the bank, but really those are the good guys. And when we're walking people around our office, we may have done it when you went there. To me, those are the heroes. You know, they do just as much of the work or really make commerce happen. And so we try to show people all sides to the bank. We recently hired a young college graduate, and she graduated from the University of Tampa. But when we were interviewing, I think her perception of a bank was just simply what she saw when she went into a branch to cash a check. That, you know, growing up, that's a bank. What they don't see and what most people don't know is there's a lot of stuff that happens inside a bank that people don't think about, whether they're an IT person, whether they're a marketing person, whether they're in compliance or security or a finance major or an econ major. There's all kinds of different jobs. So we'd love to find, you know, great talent that we can train. The big challenge in our industry is finding young people who have a passion for banking or want to get into banking.
Yeah. Well, and so part of that too, I think, talk about the technology piece of it, because like you said, with some of these smaller banks in the past, the technology piece may have been what kind of took them out of the race a little bit. And you see it in a lot of industries too. Like I was in aviation, we were doing software, but a lot of people really get stuck on that old way of thinking, and it's older technology, and they're not really thinking about the next generation and what they're used to. And it does create this kind of gap in these industries. Like I know you fly, you're a pilot now, but in aviation,
not yet.
You're on your way there.
Maybe not too long after this airs.
Yeah. Well, all right, we're going to put it out publicly so that way it's on record. But like I know that with aviation, a lot of what happened was there wasn't much investment in the technology and these things. So younger people would come into a hangar and they'd see stacks and stacks of paperwork, and people would be writing and signing off on things where they know, I use this all the time. I should be able to check 10 boxes, tap a little thing so I could sign off and be done. I don't want to sit here and do this stuff for 10 hours or however long it takes to do a full report. So with that said, what are some of the ways that you're incorporating technology to make the experience better for customers, for newer employees? And then if we can dig into the cybersecurity piece a little bit, that'd be cool.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of different technological innovations going on in our industry. And the challenge is, you've got the banking sector, which has always done things a certain way and is historically a little slow to move and adapt, because it's such a compliance-heavy industry. Nobody's willing to take the risk to try new things because a lot of executives get fired for screwing up technology things, but none of them really get promoted to try new technology things. So it's kind of a tough situation in our industry. And what's happened is on the other side, you've got a lot of fintech companies that have said, okay, well, if you don't want to adapt over here, we'll come up with a super sleek new modern payment processing platform, or we'll come up with Zelle or all these different things that you've heard of because we were a little bit slow as an industry to adapt. So now what you're seeing is with newer banks, new technology is pretty easy to come by. It's not necessarily developed in-house like a lot happens with the money center banks and the big guys. Really, it's partnerships. And that's pretty easy to accomplish. So for us, little things on the deposit side, for instance, electronic signature cards. Somebody goes out there and opens a new account, or let's say you decide, hey, I want to open an account with Cogent. When do I need to come in? Well, we'd love to have you come in the office and give you some cold brew coffee and give you a cookie, but you don't have to. We can send you signature cards to your email. You can sign it electronically on your phone. We can open the account. You can ACH money in and never have to step foot in the bank and really have a smooth process in a matter of minutes.
Okay.
On the side of payments and other types of technology on the treasury front, which is money coming into an account and money leaving an account, whether it's ACH payments or little things like remote deposit machines, we can put a check scanner in your office, which is 10-year-old technology, maybe even more than that. But a lot of times, small businesses have never been talked to about this. If they just ask their bank, can I have a remote deposit scanner machine? They may say, yeah, for $1,500 you can, and then we'll charge you this every month. Whereas we say, look, we'll get you a remote deposit scanner machine. And, if we can make your life easier, not having to come to the bank every day, of course, we'd love to see our clients, but we want to make them as efficient as possible. So banking is the easiest part of their day. And then if they want to come to the bank to see us, that's awesome. And we want to talk to them and see them at the Christmas party. But it's a consultative approach on how we can help them.
Got it. So when they're seeing you, it's not always because of problems.
That's the ideal situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So you guys are looking at all these different technologies, and the whole point is streamline the process for people.
Yep.
Okay.
Simple. Think of DocuSign in your business. Many people through COVID got used to using DocuSign because they didn't want to go places or they're just trying to do things over the internet or through video conference. Really, banking was a full paper business until a couple years ago.
Really?
And there's so many things you can do now to be much more efficient, not just be better for the environment, but make a better experience for our customer. So we could talk for days about different technologies in the industry, but one of the biggest ones that I believe is the future is API integration, application programming interface. And what that means is, let's say you've got an accounting software you use specifically for the podcasting business. Well, we as the bank want to make your life as simple as possible. So the best way to do that is to integrate directly with your software. That's your industry software. So you can do whatever it is in your industry, meaning you can bill invoices, you can reconcile your bank statements, all that without ever having to log into the bank. And it makes your day a lot easier. It makes your accounting team and your CFO's day a lot easier. And it's really simple to do now if you've got programmers on both sides willing to do that. And so what we're seeing and how we're trying to really separate ourselves from the competition is if you try to get some API integration from maybe a big bank and a company, you may be number 850 on their to-do list. We've got a great team in our IT division willing to jump on an integration the next day if it makes sense for you.
So you guys have developers who can build API connections in-house?
Yeah, it's a combination of internal as well as our core system. We use a national core system, and they have programmers too that are willing to help us. So we've got a situation where we can really integrate with some of our bigger industries, professional services. There's a lot of law firm, title company softwares that we integrate with, property management and association software. And then, of course, QuickBooks integration, some of the most common types of platforms. So that is something that most small businesses have never talked to their bank about. And that's something that we try to sit down in their office with our treasury team and just walk through. Here's how your day can be a little easier. Why are you manually putting every entry into QuickBooks to reconcile your monthly bank statement? We can just export a file out of our banking, online banking, upload it into QuickBooks, and all of a sudden you've got 90% of it done. And so those are little eye-opening experiences that are not hard to do that most small businesses just don't know about.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's just too difficult with every industry having their own software these days. It's too difficult if you're trying to build one-off integration with everybody. But if you can, through API, have a good middleman and build good application interfaces between both sides, you can quickly kind of integrate with all kinds of different platforms. So to me, that's sort of the future. People use their bank now as sort of a separate service. Mm-hmm. But I think in the future, they're going to use their bank as a service tied to their core software, which is related to their specific industry.
Got it.
For instance, construction has 2 or 3 major software platforms in the construction kind of industry, which is lien releases, waivers, payments, interaction and contracts with subs. But they still have to log in separately to their online banking and figure out how to do that stuff. Whereas at some point in the near future, and we're already getting into that now, why can't banking just be integrated into that software too? So that's where I think banks that don't adapt are really going to be in trouble. But at a minimum, you also have to have people that are willing to sit down with customers and figure out what's the best process to do it today, and then how are we going to do it 5 years from now.
Got it. And so what is that part of the consultation that you guys do, is not just looking at what your goals are and how kind of the products we can have help you, but also like what are some of the daily processes? What are some of the things you're doing? So you're kind of digging into that stuff with them too.
Yeah. So when you go through the process of switching banks, or someone gets to the point where they're sitting with us, either at their office or our office, potentially thinking about switching, that's a great opportunity to just completely review and strategize about your banking setup. Because most times people have had patchwork banking, meaning they had their personal checking account somewhere. So when they started their business, they opened their business account there. And then they've slowly added more accounts or just kind of done enough to get by. But very few people, I think, have actually sat down and reviewed their banking setup strategically. And so when you're switching banks, it's a great opportunity if that bank is willing to invest the time to do that. So for instance, yesterday I was actually talking with a business and they were thinking about switching, and we kind of walked through everything in their business. How do you get money into the business? How are you paying people? How are you billing? What software systems are you using? What's the future look like for you? And through that process, you get a lot of information. And so in this instance, this individual sends about 50 wires a year. And each one of those wires traditionally costs a lot of money. Well, why can't you use ACH for those payments? ACH costs pennies on the dollar. Mm-hmm. It's 1/200th of the price of a wire. And this individual didn't know, their bank didn't consult with them that was an option. They didn't know how to do it. And there's really no reason that those individuals couldn't accept ACH instead of wires. And so it's going to be an easy conversion. It's going to save the client, hundreds of dollars. And it's a simple question and answer process that any banker could have told them. It's just they didn't spend the time with them.
Got it. And so I don't know if you can go into the details of this, but like in a case where somebody comes to you and they've got a service-based business, do you have any recommendations for how they should set up those accounts? Like how does that work? I don't know what you can get into.
Sure, yeah. Well, the short answer is every business is different. So it's fully customized. There's no one size fits all when it comes to banking. Sometimes people call a bank and they say, "Tell me about your checking account products." And, it's like we've got small, medium, and large checking account products. And that's just not the way we operate. It may be the way some banks operate, but really it's a step-by-step process where we try to understand how the business works, how money's coming in, how money's going out. And we try to tailor things to where really first and foremost, the client is protected. There's just so much fraud out there these days. And there's a lot of tools and technology now to help at least catch fraud, hopefully prevent it, and minimize the damage for it. So it all starts with what's the safest and most efficient way to set up the banking arrangement. And then the second piece is there a way that can save you money in that process? Because a lot of people may be racking up a ton of fees and not realize it, or just by not being efficiently set up, they don't realize they're paying for things they don't need. And that's a good time to kind of review if it makes sense to continue that setup. Then making sure that, long term, the client can grow into what they want to be. A lot of times people get into kind of some type of setup that is great today, but when they're onboarding more and more clients, doesn't allow them to make payments to those clients or, efficiently move money around between their vendors, their clients, and kind of the cash flow cycle. So that's where we just try to be customizable with customers.
Got it.
And help them through it.
Got it. Yeah, and so part of that too is the more I talk to business owners and the different philosophies they have around setting these up, part of that seems like it can solve some clarity in issues in your business of where money is flowing to, how much you're spending on certain things, how you save money for taxes, and how that flows out of the business. So, all right, that's a good point.
Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of people are so focused on their business, they just kind of hope the banking's working out.
Sure.
But the reality is, net income doesn't pay bills. Cash pays bills. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a good handle on your cash flow, cash in the bank, then you really can get yourself into a lot of trouble, especially if you're either a very quickly growing business or you're a quickly shrinking business. In a downturn situation or you lose some customers, you can really get into a pinch. So that's something that I think a lot of banks miss, and a lot of customers just don't know any better. They just think the bank's supposed to help them cash a check, not necessarily, be a partner in the process.
Got it. Is that something that you guys watch for your customers? Like, do you kind of keep an eye on that stuff, or it flags you if something's going on like that?
Yeah, there's some technology like Positive Pay and others that can help you identify potential fraudulent activity. Banks have so many transactions every day, you're never going to catch anything. But one of the neat things with a smaller bank is we generally know our customers and we know their normal activity. And so we take a lot of pride on if something seems abnormal, or if there's something that just doesn't fit or is over the limits we set, which are customized to each person, it gives us an opportunity to try to call the customer and see if it's legitimate before something bad happens.
For sure.
Obviously, customers are ultimately responsible for keeping an eye on their own bank account, but to the extent we find out about something, we try to over-communicate.
Yeah, that's kind of it's a nice reassurance, because
Sure.
it is a pretty confusing process as a business owner
Sure.
to keep an eye on all this stuff, and the amount of fraud that happens now, that as it evolves so quickly, the way that people are getting sophisticated with it is pretty wild. So what are some of all right, so let's say you're a small business owner, you're running a business, you've got 10, 15, 20 employees, something
Sure.
like that. You have a lot of responsibility to make sure that money's there for paychecks, everything like that.
Right.
But then fraud is something that's always looming. So what are some of the types of fraud that you see out there that
Sure.
are hitting small business owners that maybe they don't even know exists, or they don't recognize the signs? Like, what do you guys see?
Sure. So I'd say we still see a ton of check fraud and wire fraud. Those are really your two major sources of fraud. People don't often think about, they know this subconsciously, but they don't think about every single check they write to every vendor has their account number on it. And so a lot of people, they're just throwing checks in the mail. They're showing up to unlocked mailboxes at other businesses. And people are still, going through mailboxes and industrial parks and office parks, grabbing envelopes that look like checks, and then they're trying to wash them, or now they have your account number and they try to do ACH debits, try to grab money out of your account, or put together some fraudulent, wire instructions for a transaction. Same thing with email. Emails get hacked a lot and wire instructions get compromised. But of course, wires are final and complete payments. So when a wire goes out, if the receiving bank doesn't place a hold on that immediately for suspicious activity, that money's probably gone or overseas before the owner realizes it's gone. So there's a lot of little things you can do with today's technology to help prevent that, whether it's setting up multiple accounts, like an incoming wire account. So if for whatever reason you're giving your wire instructions or account number out to the public for transactions, if that account number does get compromised, they don't have your operating account with all the majority of your money in there. There's technologies like Positive Pay, which is a software that allows the bank to see if the payee, the dollar amount, the date, the check number all match what the client actually printed. So if there's a number that's off or a payee name that's off, that would hopefully get flagged. There's also ways where you can put blocks on accounts. So if I get your account number, in theory, I could go try to originate an ACH debit and grab the money out of your account. As long as I have your account number and your routing number, I can grab money out of your account. Hopefully someone would catch it in the process, one of the banks, but it's not guaranteed and it happens all the time. And so what we recommend to all of our clients and how we try to set them up is with ACH debit blocks or ACH filters that will allow them one added layer of protection in their operating account, because you're talking big dollar figures from time to time. Some businesses have $1,000 in their deposit account, but some businesses have $10 million. And it could be a while before someone realizes that money is gone, if it is gone. So
For sure.
At least being aware of the options for a customer and potentially some ways to set up their banking that could protect them could be nice. A lot of people don't realize the value in that from a day-to-day standpoint because you're not dealing with fraud every day. But if you talk to anyone who has had fraud on a business, there's nothing more miserable than shutting your business account down, clearing checks one by one, making sure they're accurate, setting up your payroll out of a new account, changing out your payment instructions with every single one of your vendors and clients. It's quite a challenge. So better to handle it on the front end.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And so with that, the filters and the blocks, you can basically make it where, hey, anything over this certain amount either doesn't go through or it automatically gets flagged for an approval process, something like that.
Yeah, there's ways customers build their own rules.
Okay.
And however they set up the rule can be part of the filter, or they can just put a permanent block saying this account, nobody can grab any money out of it at all, period. And so it really depends on what the customer uses that account for. But the moral of the story really is people need to be aware that fraud still happens a lot.
Yeah.
And they really need to go above and beyond to protect it. And it can help if you have a consultative bank.
Got it. Okay. Well, and is there anything else that you think would be relevant that we should talk about for small business owners that they don't need to know? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
I think the general theme, as I've learned in the banking industry over the last 20 years, is really around you have to have a relationship in your bank. And whether it's a big bank or a small bank, relationships do still matter because the banking industry is kind of a web of different divisions, compliance, policies, procedures. And if you don't have someone to help navigate you through that process, whether it's a loan request, whether it's a deposit situation, whether you've been exposed to fraud and you just need some help, you have to have a relationship at the bank that can help you through that process, because otherwise you get lost, you don't become a priority. And that's where I think people tend to migrate to smaller banks when there's an issue. And it's not their favorite thing to do, go through a banking change.
Sure.
But no matter what, even if you don't switch to Cogent, which I hope you do, but if you don't, make sure you've got a good advocate in your current bank. They know you, they know your business, and they can help you through those conversations, because it can be really daunting and it can be extremely frustrating if you're sitting there on a computerized, phone voice message trying to get something solved.
Yeah, especially when you have a big issue like fraud or any of those kind of things. Okay.
And it's also important, lending is a big question we get a lot, because a lot of small businesses want lines of credit. They want to buy their office building or their industrial building, and they've got credit needs. And I think it's important that customers talk through what their future plans are with their banker. And people get frustrated from time to time of, my bank's asking me for all this information, or why do they want to know all this? I think it's important to sort of change the mindset of, why are they asking me for all this? And it's because we can be a really good checks and balance for a small business owner. We can tell them the risks we see. We can tell them the good things that we see. And sometimes the best answer for a client can be no. We've had a lot of clients who they almost got overextended, and for one reason or another, we said, we're going to do a smaller loan instead of what you've asked for, and then something bad happens, and they're like, wow, I'm so glad you didn't let me borrow $2 million, because I would have really been in trouble. We're not trying to be the bad guys in some of those conversations. We're trying to say, we've seen a lot of things, and these policies that are in place have sometimes been written in blood, meaning it's there because something bad happened. Mm-hmm. As long as you can have flexibility and common sense in your approach beyond just what the paper says. And that's where banks really separate themselves. It's, here's normally what we do, but you do a great job over here. For some reason or another, it's still a great opportunity. And so let's make it work.
Got it. Yeah, you can follow the hard and fast rules, but then also see the opportunities and work with people on an individual basis.
Banking is a quantitative and a qualitative business. So the numbers are the numbers, and that drives a big piece of the decision and the regulation and the policies. But there's also a subjective piece to it too, understanding the competitive environment and the local market metrics and the sub-market that you're in, and all those different things kind of play into the role as well.
For sure. Okay. Well, I think this is a good time to talk about the future of banking. So
let's do it.
So I came to the crypto event, and it was pretty informative. Of course, it happened right after the FTX crash. It was like it was
perfect timing.
Yeah, and actually, it was perfect timing, because I think it seemed like everybody in the room knew that crypto and blockchain technology is not FTX. They are not the same thing. But a lot of people don't really know that. And one of our earliest conversations came from seeing you guys put something out about developing blockchain technology and seeing this as a real tool that the industry can use. So just in terms of starting to give people some context, what are some of the ways that you see this kind of stuff becoming part of banking?
Sure. So first and foremost, there's definitely a delineation between blockchain and crypto.
Sure.
We don't, as Cogent Bank, do anything related to cryptocurrencies. I'm probably not the best expert on that industry, but starting at a high level, banks really do three things. They lend money, they manage people's deposits, their savings, and try to place those funds with people who want to borrow. And we process payments. And payments are a huge part of the industry, and that's really where blockchain comes in and we think is going to make a huge difference in the future. If you look at how people make payments today, it's generally using 1960s, 1970s technology, ACH, wire, person-to-person payments. They're really old business-to-business payments. They're really old school technology. There's a lot of risk associated with them, with fraud, like we just talked about. Mm-hmm. They're not really final payments. ACH, for instance, can be kicked back for up to 3 days or maybe even longer. Paper checks, obviously, take a long time to clear. There's float, which is risk to the bank and to the person depositing the check. There's just a lot more efficient ways you can make payments. Not to mention that system's open, whatever it is, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Well, in today's world, we're a 24/7 type of global society now. Money's moving all the time. And you've started to see some fintech companies pop up like Zelle and others where I can pay you or I can pay the babysitter and it moves money around quickly. Well, if you take that and kind of pump it up to a national level, blockchain technologies are really coming in to make quicker, safer, faster payments 365, 24/7. And we feel like as the banking industry, if we don't find a way to modernize our payment technologies, that fintech companies are going to take that over. And then what's to stop fintech companies from becoming banks and kind of taking the full client relationship? And so that's where we're really trying to be innovative. And we're also trying to be a first mover because when you're talking about new technologies in banking, you're talking about a slow adaptation. Compliance policies have to be written, testing has to be done. You have to have kind of the beta testing out of the way. And finally, it kind of happens. Well, we've been able to build our technology. We've been able to build the compliance and the policies around it. And we're live with blockchain payments now. And so we're proud to say we're one of the few banks in the country doing that right now. And more importantly, what we see is the long-term opportunity. And when this becomes mainstream and title companies want to close a real estate transaction on Christmas morning at 9 a.m., we want to be the first bank that's around to help them close that. And it also helps with international payments, business-to-business payments, because you may have noticed that if you try to do a Zelle payment, it's capped at a certain amount. There's a lot of restrictions in there. You can only do so much per day, so much on a single transaction. But there may be a time when Southwest Florida Podcast wants to order all new equipment at a certain time on a Sunday morning and just with the click of a button, know that you have final payment, know that there's no fraud because it's kind of a closed loop blockchain system. Everybody has been vetted on both sides and make that transaction happen quickly. And so we believe that's really going to be the future of the payment part of the business. And you'll continue to see other big companies, as we kind of talked about in that meeting, adapt blockchains. And whether that's use in the real estate business, whether it's used instead of breaking down equity in a real estate purchase and capital is raised through blockchain mechanisms, that's really going to be a key technology as the industry evolves.
So so this is live now. This technology, you guys are using it now. So what kind of impact has that had both on your business and then also on the customers that are using it?
Yeah, I'd say number one, people like it because it's more efficient than wires. The majority of our clients that we have using it are using it in lieu of wire technology, which we talked about. Wires before can be expensive. They're very, very risky because if you accidentally put a wrong zero in the wire instructions or something happens, it can cause a lot of problems. And hopefully you get the money back, but you very well may not. So
is this also in lieu of like an ACH payment as well?
Correct. Yeah. So it's really cheap and easy to do. So the majority of people who use blockchain payments now are people who have a lot of payments. Typically business-to-business payments that are wire payments or ACH payments. And this can be a safer and cheaper alternative for them. As far as its impact on Cogent, I would say, for us, it's a kind of a long-term strategy where we're well-positioned to be an early adopter. Obviously, we want to have that offering for clients now. But the bigger thing is in 24 months from now, when this becomes more mainstream, people are going to say, all right, do you have that? And we can't move our relationship to Cogent unless you offer this technology. And we don't want to lose clients. We want to gain clients when it comes to that point.
For sure. And when the time comes, you also don't want to be just figuring it out at that point. So you'll have a few years already under your belt to be able to say, all right, hey, we know these things are written in blood over here.
Sure.
That's okay.
And these things are built in partnership with regulators and the regulatory environment. The good thing about banks is nobody can really go rogue, or they shouldn't really go rogue if they're operating the right way. And that means you have auditors, you've got federal regulators, state regulators that you're working with to try and develop the right policies and talk about the worst case scenarios and the best case scenarios. And I'll say our team at the top of the house has a great relationship with our regulators, and it really becomes a partnership because we're working within the constraints of the government, and they have a vested interest in us because of FDIC insurance to make sure we don't do anything that's silly.
Sure. Okay. Got it. Awesome. Well, Brandon, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to touch on that is important to get out there?
I just want to say it's been an incredible journey thus far over the last couple of years. Could not be more proud of our team. When starting a bank, just like any small business, there's a handful of people that believe in the mission and take the risk. And people that believed in Cogent Bank early on, both employees and customers, took a lot of risk. The employees, many of them, didn't know if it made sense to leave a great job and go be a part of a startup bank. And they believed in our team and believed in the mission and could not be more proud of the way that group of individuals takes care of their clients. I could talk to so many different clients and all they do is rave about the team. And that makes me really proud, but also the customers that believed in us early on, and hopefully the customers that we get to meet over the next year or two. Hopefully many of them are listening to this podcast, but we're there to take care of you. We love the opportunity to kind of show you what a local banking relationship can do. And many small businesses had maybe a great banking relationship at one point, but because of employee turnover or mergers, maybe lost that. And we'd love to give it back to them. So we're proud to be here in Southwest Florida and look forward to working with you on hopefully many more endeavors and helping the audience as they have different challenges and banking needs.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on here and doing this. I know that you answered a bunch of questions that the small business owners that I spoke with had, so I appreciate this. I'm definitely going to be sending them some clips about their questions so they can get that answered. And we'll go from there. But again, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for everything. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
This episode is brought to you by Southwest Florida Podcast. We help businesses make marketing videos. A lot of businesses see the value in video content, but they don't know where to start. We work with businesses to highlight the value they bring to their customers and share that online. Now, we've created the Marketing Manager's Guide to Video Content that you can download for free by following the link below or scanning the QR code on your screen.